Mokuba is dead.
Oh no, no.
Yep, sorry to break it to you like this, guys, but this video is the Mokuba is dead theory, where I prove that Mokuba was really dead this entire time. Don't believe me? Well, make sure you watch until the end of the video, and if you still don't agree with me, I will
take a potato chip and eat it.
Now, why do I think Mokuba is dead in the first place? Well, it was actually one scene from The Dark Side of Dimensions, the movie. This scene convinced me without a doubt that Mokuba was dead, and that was when Seto leaves to chase a Tem into the afterlife, where Mokuba's potential last conversation with Seto takes place, via a Zoom call. Now, I found this a little strange, as what could Mokuba be possibly doing which prevents him from being there for Seto, by his side at the critical point in his journey? The whole interaction was just a little fishy to me. Both Seto and Mokuba knew the risks of entering the afterlife, since Seto had almost lost himself once before in the manga Transcend game. Their last interaction was a little bit... well, have a little look for yourself.
Thank you for the update, Mokuba. But I really need to concentrate right now.
Big bro, are you sure you want to go through with this? We haven't even tested this prototype. It's too dangerous. Seto? Seto!
It's time. Mokuba, you're in charge.
Seto. Promise you'll come back.
Very odd, no? Especially since this is the same guy who threatened to jump off a castle to save Mokuba.
I would have risked anything to save you, Mokuba.
You'd think their potential last convo would have been a little more, emotional? So the only conclusion is that Mokuba is dead. And
wait, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. There could have been loads of reasons why that happened. He doesn't have to be dead. He could have been...
No, he's dead. He's dead, alright? Deal with it.
You can't keep getting away with this!
So could Mokuba be potentially a consciousness uploaded onto the computer mainframe, like another character we know? Is Mokuba a figment of Seto's imagination, or maybe the most unlikely scenario, and Mokuba is still alive? Well, in this video, we will identify how and when Mokuba dies, and who potentially was responsible. And come on guys, quite frankly, I'm surprised no one's picked up on this theory before me. I mean, it's really obvious, guys.
You see, but do not observe.
However, before we jump into the video, a quick shout out to Rin the Rebel, who drew this amazing art for the thumbnail. Let's start by answering a very important question, which is, when did Mokuba die? I mean, he was definitely alive at some point, wasn't he? Or was he a figment of Seto's imagination right from the very start, to help Seto cope with the loss of his parents, as well as the brutal treatment he received at the hands of Gozaburo Kaiba?
What are you saying? This is bullshit. This is bullshit. I'm not listening to this. You are insane.
No, you're insane.
No, I won't go that far. Mokuba definitely existed. He has been referenced by too many characters and had full-on conversations with many of them, as well as being simultaneously pivotal to the plot. So I can't justify Mokuba being Seto's imaginary brother, but I can justify him being dead. When does he die? Or better yet, if we can establish who was responsible, we can start to put together a time frame for the incident. The Kaiba brothers have an impressive amount of enemies who are after their fortune and empire, many of them surfacing and hitting Kaiba where it hurts through his little brother Mokuba. Now let's have a little peek at the suspects who could potentially be responsible for killing Mokuba.
Number one, could you please sing the opening to I Want It That Way?
Really? Okay. You are my fire.
Number two, keep it going.
Starting off with the one and only Gozaburo Kaiba using Mokuba as a pawn, manipulating him against his older brother Seto. Next goes to the notorious Pegasus, capturer and tormentor of Mokuba. Then the Big Five, a group of despicable businessmen trying to take over Kyber Corp by any means necessary, even if it means going through Mokuba. Noah, the forever child, trapped in a virtual world, jealous of the success Seto had achieved, which was his birthright to begin with. His aim to hurt Kyber and take over Kyber Corp, possibly via Mokuba. Dartz, hell-bent in releasing the Great Leviathan. However, unusually, Dartz isn't a suspect. Mokuba was a speck of irrelevance for Dartz, and he has bigger fish to fry. However, one of his henchmen, Alistair, is a suspect. Losing his brother Mikey at a very young age, he believed Kyber Corp was responsible, and wanting revenge on Kyber, even if it means hurting his brother Mokuba. Last but not least, Siegfried von Schroeder, a rival company to Kyber Corp, a jealous, bitter fiend, hell-bent to destroy Kyber Corp, potentially destroying Mokuba in the process. Now, this is a huge list of enemies for a couple of kids to have. However, a few of these can be immediately ruled out, as they could not possibly have killed Mokuba. Alistair being one of them. Alistair challenged Seto to their second duel on a moving plane. Not only was it moving, but it was descending quite fast, and yes, Mokuba was on board. However, after a long, arduous duel, Kyber took the win with the Tyrant Burst Dragon.
Now my blue eyes destroy all three of his monsters!
With vengeance on his mind, Alistair was looking to take Mokuba from Seto permanently. Similar to how he thought Gozaburo and the military company Kyber Corp took Mikey from him. Or so he thought. It turned out to be Dartz who had played a mind game on him, impersonating to be Gozaburo all along. The ending was pretty wholesome, as instead of taking Mokuba's life in an act of revenge, Alistair saw Mikey through Mokuba and managed to say his farewells, finding the closure he was very much looking for.
Mikey? Is that you? It's about time I gave this back to you, bro.
Thanks, Alistair.
No sweat.
Gozaburo might have been innocent when it came to killing Alistair's little brother Mikey, but is he guilty of murdering Mokuba? Unfortunately not. Gozaburo, as formidable as he was beaten at chess by a 10-year-old Seto, forcing him to adopt the two brothers. Now Gozaburo, as Mokuba rightly put it, was a monster, constantly abusing the two brothers, as Mokuba describes it as torture. However, according to the manga and anime, it seems the main focus to the brutal treatment was Seto. Eventually Seto took a stand and took over Kyber Corp, leading Gozaburo to jump out the window to his untimely death. So it looks like Seto eliminated the threat before his little brother Mokuba was put in any serious danger. And since we're looking at potential non-dangers, we got to have a look at Siegfried von Schroeder. Schroeder Corp was a potential rival for Kyber, with Siegfried being a natural genius like Seto. He posed a massive threat to Kyber Corp. However, in the Grand Championship arc, Siegfried tried and failed in every aspect, whether that was losing to Kyber in a duel, or even spreading a virus to corrupt the files of Kyber Corp. But it seems that Siegfried only had eyes for Seto and destroying Kyber Corp. So lucky for Mokuba, Siegfried had his own little brother Leon to neglect and ignore. So Mokuba was irrelevant in the eyes of Siegfried, and at the end of the arc had a pre-wholesome reconciliation with Leon. So with these three being deemed not guilty, that leaves us with three suspects: Pegasus, the Big Five, and Noah. So who could it be? Who is responsible for the death of Mokuba Kyber? Well, what if I told you that they were all involved? I know it sounds ridiculous, the fact that multiple people are at play here in a conspiracy to murder Mokuba. I mean, together, these three suspects have nothing in common, apart from the temporary alliance between Pegasus and the Big Five. However, when you add a fourth mystery person to the pool, this theory becomes a lot more clearer. And no, I don't mean Atem, who famously said the line,
Mokuba! This time you're dead!
Which I know looks incriminating, but he is actually innocent. Now, how do we find this mystery person that ties all of this together? Well, to quote Velma from Scooby-Doo, it's always the last person you suspect. And who would that be? What about Mokuba's brother? Seto Kaiba.
Oh, wow! Wow!
But how could that be possible? Could Seto Kaiba really be responsible for the death of Mokuba? It's very hard to believe, but it's not impossible. If you look at the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, especially around the time of Death T, Mokuba states that Seto's heart was corrupted by the demon of gaming, and that was ever since he cheated against Gozaburo, securing his and Mokuba's adoption. Now bear in mind, Seto was an incredibly different person back then. His heart was black, and he relied on cruelty in order to manipulate and bully his way towards what he wanted. So is it a far stretch that he would also murder his brother? Well, in the manga, when Mokuba seeks approval from his older brother, Seto says the line,
Mokuba, until you trash these stupid feelings of brotherly love, you'll always be a loser.
A line that traumatized Mokuba. Seto is basically saying his ambition and will to win triumphs his love for his only brother and family, Mokuba. In T4 of Death T, Mokuba was the obstacle Yugi had to pass in order to get closer to escaping the sadistic trials Seto had put him through. The Pharaoh went head to head with Mokuba in a game of capsule monsters, a game which Mokuba was actually an expert in. And even though Mokuba had rigged the game, giving himself access to all the high level capsule monsters, Yugi managed to devise a strategy to defeat Mokuba using his weak monsters. Something Kaiba had actually foreseen, as he had no faith in Mokuba right from the very start. The game took place in a virtual reality box, a new invention which perfected solid light virtual reality within the small encasing. With Yugi walking away from the box a winner, Seto decides upon himself that the loser must face a penalty game, called Death by Virtual Reality. This is a concept where the person is shown their worst nightmares and fears until they lose their mind and go insane. Seto must have used this on many people beforehand, as he knew exactly how long someone had to last in the box before they lost their mind, which was exactly 10 minutes. Kaiba has subjected Mokuba of his own free will to undergo this punishment for losing. His own brother. Now this doesn't make any sense. What did Seto Kaiba gain by murdering Mokuba? Well, nothing. He gains nothing. This was a part of Seto that was ingrained into him from his childhood via Gozaburo Kaiba. When Seto eventually double crosses Gozaburo and takes over Kaiba Corp, he manages to turn the entire board against him, leading Gozaburo to teach Seto a valuable life lesson. Gozaburo commits suicide by jumping out the window.
To lose means to die. Thank you for teaching me.
Now this lesson applies to everyone, including his own brother.
Liar!
So there we have it. The murderer is Seto Kaiba. Right?
Oh. There's one thing I almost forgot. Do you have another minute?
Kaiba sentenced Mokuba to death in the virtual reality box. However, Mokuba was saved by Yugi before the virtual reality device did any long-lasting damage. So when could he have killed him? Now, we all know Kaiba holds grudges. I mean, you just have to look at how obsessed he is with Atem to see that. But the timeline doesn't add up. After Mokuba is rescued, Seto immediately duels Yugi, where after losing, Seto is dealt with the penalty game, Mind Crush.
Open your mind!
This leaves Seto in a vegetable state for many months, where he is piecing together the puzzle of his own heart, alone in a mansion being looked after by his servants. So there was no time in between Mokuba losing and Seto losing for him to carry out his act of divine punishment, which had been installed into him by Gozaburo. Even after Seto recovers, Yugi had eliminated all the darkness in his heart, so Seto would no longer want to do Mokuba any harm. When Seto regains consciousness and discovers Pegasus had kidnapped Mokuba, saving Mokuba was his first priority, indicating he's no longer the same person he once was before.
Isn't that cute?
It is cute, but it leaves us with a dilemma, because if it isn't Kaiba, then who could it be? Well, maybe it was someone who was right there from the very start. A character you wouldn't really notice in the manga or anime, until it's too late, that is. The name of the man who killed Mokuba is Kimo. Kimo. The man with Mokuba's blood on his hands.
Stop lying to me!
Alright, well, if you don't believe me, let me explain. Let's put the remaining jigsaw pieces in the puzzle and reveal how everything and everyone is connected. After Death Tea, Mokuba was left alone with a corpse of a brother. After Seto's loss to Yugi, Kaiba Corp's stock plummeted, as one of the reasons shareholders bought into the company was due to Seto's reputation as the #1 gamer. When he lost that though, that title went to Yugi. The reputation of the company took a dive, which led to interested parties attempting to move in on Kaiba Corp whilst he was weak and undefended. One such party being Pegasus. He colluded with the Big Five, the 5 corporate leaders of Kaiba Corp, Gansley, Crump, Johnson, Nesbitt and Lecter, in order to buy the remaining shares. The Big Five owned 60% of the company already. Now only 2 things stood in his way, one being the Big Five's condition, which was beating Yugi at a duel first, in order to claim back the title of King of Games and bring the reputation of Kaiba Corp back to its peak. The second obstacle was the documents hidden in Seto's safe. These were necessary in order to transition the CEO title from Seto onto Pegasus. Mokuba, knowing this, swallowed the key to the safe in order to protect the documents. So the Big Five had no choice but to kidnap Mokuba, bringing him all the way to Industrial Illusions, where Mokuba would meet his eventual demise. However, it wouldn't be immediate. In fact, he almost escaped his fate. While being held hostage, Mokuba was kept under a watchful eye in the hopes the key would, come out the other end. Mokuba managed to escape from his captors. That's actually when he met Yugi and the crew. They were actually the last people to see Mokuba alive. As they filled Mokuba's head with hopes and promises, eventually Mokuba was tracked down by none other than Kimo. Now Kimo was actually someone Mokuba knew very, very well. Kimo was actually Mokuba's bodyguard. However, he was a double agent for Pegasus the whole time, feeding Pegasus with information. Being Mokuba's personal bodyguard, he had a high access level throughout Kaiba Corp. This is proven when it's revealed that Kimo actually stole Kaiba's deck after Seto lost to Yugi, and allowed a bounty hunter to use Seto's deck in Duelist Kingdom. Now, just based on that alone, I believe he was the one who allowed the Big Five access to Kaiba's private mansion, leading to Mokuba's unfortunate kidnapping. Kimo was a cruel and uncaring person with no problem hurting young children, as we see him manhandle a duelist who had just been robbed of his deck and star chips. Mokuba was brought back to the castle and Mokuba was betrayed and murdered by Kimo, the person who had been by his side most of his life. Unfortunately, Mokuba had become too much of a nuisance to Pegasus's plans. The only factor keeping him alive was a key inside his body, but with Mokuba now dead, could be extracted much easier. The issue is Mokuba had no further use. The Big Five had majority of Kaiba Corp. Mokuba's shares of the company was of no significance. Mokuba was only an obstacle getting in the way of the potential takeover of Kaiba Corp. Death is actually quite a common theme in Yu-Gi-Oh, with many of the manga panels showing Yugi and the gang witnessing people being shocked to death by being hit by 1,000,000 volts of electricity, burning to death in a room full of flames. Pegasus himself was murdered by Pecora and had his eye extracted from his head, which Pecora then proceeded to lick. So Mokuba, a 9-year-old being murdered, fits right in the theme of the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga. So yes, that's the unfortunate end of Mokuba. However, I bet you're wondering, well, that still doesn't explain how we see Mokuba in every other scene after Duelist Kingdom. Even at the end of Duelist Kingdom, where the Kaiba brothers are reunited. Well, do you guys want to know how that's possible?
Tell me! Oh, you'll find out. I'm about to summon it. Tell me!
How do we still see Mokuba in the anime and manga after being killed by Chemo? He should rightfully be dead and buried. Well, to understand that, we must first understand Pegasus as a character, including his motivations and what drives him. Only then can we understand how Mokuba made a comeback. Literally.
It's alive.
Pegasus is a great villain, as his motivations all circle around the love of his life, Cecilia. She unfortunately passes away due to an illness which took her life at a very young age. Ever since then, Pegasus has been obsessed with souls and the afterlife, and his search led him to Egypt. Now this is where things get a little interesting. One day on his travels he comes across this mysterious figure called Shadi, the protector of the Millennium items. After following the stranger, Pegasus is caught and is put on the Millennium trial for the Millennium Eye. After passing the trial, Pegasus sees a glimpse of Cecilia's soul. But how is that possible? It was clear to Pegasus that there was some kind of connection between the Millennium items and souls, or one step further, the afterlife. This gave Pegasus hope. He soon went on to create the game of Duel Monsters, where he used the power of the Millennium Eye to capture the souls of monsters trapped in the stone tablet for many millennia. With his item he had the ability to capture souls, but why only stop at monster souls? A question Pegasus probably asked himself on many occasions, in the hopes to retrieve his love, Cecilia. Now, Pegasus was a genius of his time. His intellect far surpassed many people of his own generation, competing with even Seto Kaiba. Pegasus had two things every genius needed. He had time, and he had the key to unlocking knowledge via his Millennium Eye. So he created two plans in bringing back Cecilia. We'll call them Plan A and Plan B.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Project RA was introduced in the short manga series Yu-Gi-Oh! R, a 5-volume manga taking place shortly after Battle City. A story about Pegasus and his adopted children, which apparently he had many. However, the story revolves around one particular child, Yako Tenma, all grown up. So what is Project RA? Well, Project RA is a scheme Yako intended to use in order to revive Pegasus from the dead. It is a plan Yako created using the leftover work Pegasus had abandoned before he tragically died in the manga. Project RA stands for Rebirth of Avatar. And no, I don't mean...
My brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang.
Yako believed that Pegasus' soul was in all of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards he had created. His logic was, in order to create the cards, Pegasus had left an essence of his own soul in all the cards. Yako intended to revive Pegasus and insert his soul into the body of Taya Gardner. Yep, you heard that correctly. Let me introduce you to the new and improved Pegasus.
Oh, Yugi boy, you're my next opponent.
So how does Project RA actually work? And why did he choose Taya out of all the people in the world to be the host? Well, Project RA revolves around the wicked gods. The wicked Eraser resembling Slifer the Sky Dragon, the wicked Dreadroot resembling Obelisk the Tormentor, and finally the most powerful, the wicked Avatar, the same likeness of the winged dragon of Ra. Now these three, believe it or not, have Egyptian god card level strength, as well as a hierarchy similar to the three gods of Egypt, with the wicked Eraser and the wicked Dreadroot being category 1, and the wicked Avatar being category 2, similar to the winged dragon of Ra. Now these creatures were initially designed to keep the original three gods in check. Now it is said that Pegasus had left the data for these terrifying creatures on his system, however intentionally not creating them and even left them unnamed. Yugioh took over that mantle and named them the Jashins, which translate into the evil gods.
Hey, you there. Would you like to join the way of Jashin?
Now unfortunately, the backstory of these evil gods is a mystery and not explained very well in the manga. However, I do have a theory which I'll leave for another video. Now, Yugioh wanted to use the power of the evil gods to fuel Project RA. However, it wasn't that easy. There were certain conditions that had to be met for the vessel to be accepted for the soul transfer. 1. The vessel must be physically and mentally healthy. 2. The vessel must not be a duelist, as duelists have something called Sword of Heart that makes it difficult to detach their soul from the body. Number 3, the vessel must be someone who will inflict pain on Yugimoto. However, I personally believe this third rule is just so Yugioh could get revenge on Yugi, as he blamed him for the death of Pegasus, and not actually essential for Project RA. Now, there are many reasons why Pegasus abandoned this project in the first place. It was because the wicked gods are essentially evil, and the proof is kind of in the name. So yes, it is possible to revive someone with this power. Proof of that is Bandit Keith, who was brought back to life with the power of the wicked avatar. The vessels revived by the wicked gods would be corrupted by the evil gods' influence, and not only them, but the person in charge of the project would also be corrupted, similar to how Yugioh was. Pegasus was in love with Cecilia. The last thing he would probably want is her soul to be in another person's body, especially a tainted, wicked soul. Pegasus, believe it or not, still had a conscience, and releasing an evil into the world in order to bring back the love of his life isn't the way he'd want to do it. So yes, Mokuba wasn't brought back using the wicked gods, but he was brought back by Plan A. Now, in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, it confusingly states that Pegasus conducts the Duelist Kingdom tournament in order to gain Seto Kaiba's company, Kaiba Corp, as well as to get Yugi's Millennium item in order to combine the two to revive Cecilia. However, in the manga, that's simply not true. All Pegasus is after is Kaiba's company, and Yugi is a means to an end, in order to get all the shares necessary to do a full takeover. So why did Pegasus want Kaiba's company so flippin' badly? It was actually in order to gain possession of this thing. That's right, it's called the Dual Ring server. This server alone was responsible for all the virtual reality holograms produced by Kaiba Corp. It also stored all the information on all the Yu-Gi-Oh card data. In Depth T, we see a small version of this device, for example the virtual reality boxes. However, in Duelist Kingdom, we see the gradual progression of this device into a whole duel arena, until eventually Kaiba creates a handheld duel disc which is powered by the Dual Ring server. Proof of this is when Yugioh takes over the Dual Ring server in Yu-Gi-Oh! R, the holograms for every duelist all over the world disappear. The Dual Ring server is an impressive piece of kit. It produces solid light vision holograms and transports that image anywhere in the world. In this manga panel, Yugioh Tenma is seen projecting himself in front of Yugi in his own classroom, without any dual disc even being present. Now, during Duelist Kingdom, and while Seto was still in a coma, this Dual Ring server was most likely a prototype, with it probably being the next project Seto Kaiba was going to be working on. You know, other than tormenting Yugi. Pegasus' company, Industrial Illusions, were working very close with Kaiba Corp and had many spies working within Kaiba Corp, including Chemo. So Pegasus already knew all about this device and all its capabilities. So Pegasus devised a plan where he would use Kaiba's solid light technology in order to bring Cecilia back. Croquet, Pegasus' right-hand assistant, confirms this at the end of Duelist Kingdom, as he tells Yugi that this technology is so realistic that the monsters can be mistaken for living beings. By now you've probably guessed what I'm trying to say. Plan A revolves around bringing someone back to life via a solid light hologram. Yes, that's correct. Mokuba is a hologram.
Okay. Oh, you crazy.
Am I crazy or are you crazy? Okay, I know it doesn't make any sense yet, but there's still a lot of questions that I need to answer. Like, why did Pegasus bring Mokuba back to life in the first place? How is Mokuba still able to function as himself? And lastly, why has no one noticed Mokuba as a hologram before? Well, the reason Pegasus brought Mokuba back to life via the solid light holograms is not because he cared about Mokuba. Mokuba was simply a guinea pig to test the system would work before attempting to use it on someone he actually cared about, like Cecilia. This was the same logic Yako Tenma used in Yu-Gi-Oh! R. He brought back Bandit Keith before attempting to bring back Pegasus. The reason being, if anything went wrong, they would both lose their only chance to revive the person they cared most about. How is Mokuba still able to function as himself even after being dead? Well, Pegasus uploaded Mokuba's memories to the Dual Ring server, a server which is able to handle endless amounts of data, already housing the data of all the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Now this brings us back to one of the culprits involved, Noah. Gozaburo designed a system where after Noah's accident, he uploaded the memories and consciousness to a computer, allowing him to live the rest of his immortal life in a virtual reality world. This was done way back before Death T. This technology exists deep within the Kyber Corp system. Yes, it was probably a very basic version, however nonetheless it was there. And Pegasus probably used this technology, performing the same feat as Gozaburo did, however combining the Dual Ring server with Mokuba's memories. Something Gozaburo didn't have access to back then, when he was experimenting with Noah. Giving Noah instead a giant computer brain where all his consciousness was stored. Pegasus was able to conduct these secret experiments as he still had many informers on the inside, for example Chemo, who fed Pegasus information on the daily. Now I know this seems unlikely, however you have to understand how tight Pegasus' grip was over Kyber Corp. Most of Kyber's employees end up defecting to Pegasus. Now for this experiment to work, Mokuba had to be dead, or it wouldn't be an accurate test for Cecilia. Now when the Dual Ring server creates a Mokuba hologram, it also has Mokuba's inbuilt consciousness already included, meaning Mokuba himself wouldn't at first realise that he is an artificial version of himself. Mokuba 2.0 if you like. Now why has no one noticed Mokuba being a solid light hologram? Well, the answer is kind of in the question. It's a solid light hologram, attached to the most powerful operating system known to man. Mokuba's image would be immaculate, not a single glitch in his character. In the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, Teo was abducted by Yako, and a solid light hologram was left in its place. Now even her closest friends never realised that she was a solid light hologram. That was until Yako revealed it himself. The duplication was perfect. However, there is obviously one major flaw, which is physical touch and aging. Kyber shortly after Duelist Kingdom would notice this change in Mokuba, and if we know Kyber, he doesn't take things lightly. He would definitely come after Pegasus for what he had done to his brother. But by the time he had realised what Pegasus had done, Pegasus himself had been murdered at the hands of Bakura, leading Seto to do what he does best, which is finding a solution through technology. In DSOD, Kyber develops a new dual disc, which makes solid light vision even more real, as we now start to see Mokuba age for the very first time, as well as his change in appearance. But wait, we clearly see Mokuba's soul in Duelist Kingdom being trapped inside Pegasus' card. Yes, it's true, Pegasus did initially take Mokuba's soul as a bargaining chip against Seto, or potentially another experiment tool to test Project RA. However, Mokuba's brain had already been harvested, and what remains was a dead Mokuba. So when Pegasus was defeated and he released the souls of all his captives, we see Mokuba's soul shoot out of the card, but with no body to return to, it goes straight into the afterlife. Goodbye, Mokuba. Well, after Seto realizes what happened to Mokuba, Seto naturally tries to help his brother. However, he soon realizes that his efforts were futile and focuses on helping Mokuba become more real, leading to the advances we see in DSOD. Seto most likely focuses obsession and anger which he feels for what happened to Mokuba on the only person who has ever defeated him, Yugi. However, when Atem returns to the afterlife, he's left with nothing. No rival and no brother. The virtual brother he did have probably felt empty and missing the key part of which makes every human, which is their soul. Similar to Pegasus Once Upon a Time, Kaiba would become obsessed with the afterlife. Now, interestingly enough, in the manga Transcend game, we see Kaiba achieve his true goal, dimensional ascension, allowing Kaiba access to other dimensions, including the afterlife. Yes, to duel Atem and finally claim back his title, but most importantly, to visit his little brother Mokuba. That, guys, is the Mokuba is dead theory. So if I've convinced you of the truth, make sure you like and subscribe. But if I didn't convince you, make sure you like and subscribe anyway. Thanks for watching.